I had been looking forward to my sister's 18th birthday for weeks. It felt like a big moment, not just for her, but for our whole family. We've always celebrated birthdays together, cake, decorations, music, and laughter filling the house. I thought this year would be no different. A few days before the party, I noticed my parents whispering in the living room. They mentioned booking a venue and finalizing the guest list. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't received an invitation yet, but maybe it was just an oversight. I waited, expecting my sister to bring it up at dinner, or at least drop a hint about what she wanted for her big day. But she never did. I told myself she was just busy with planning. Still, something felt off. That night, curiosity got the best of me. I casually asked my mom what time we should be ready for the party. She looked at me strangely, like I had said something wrong. My dad cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. My mom hesitated before saying, "Sweetheart, maybe you should sit this one out." Sit this one out? I blinked, confused. Why? She glanced at my dad again, and he sighed. "Your sister thinks it's best if it's just her close friends and, immediate family." My stomach dropped. Immediate family? Wasn't I part of that? I felt cold all over. My own sister didn't want me there, and my parents, who should have defended me, just sat there, acting like this was normal, like I was the one making a big deal out of it. I wanted to argue, to ask why, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I just sat there, feeling smaller than ever. I couldn't keep quiet. My own sister didn't invite me to her birthday, and my parents just brushed it off like it was nothing. It didn't make sense. I had to hear it from her. The next morning, I walked straight to her room. She was on her phone, scrolling like she had no care in the world. I took a deep breath. Why am I not invited? My voice was steady, but my hands were cold. She barely looked up. "Because I don't want you there." I frowned. "But why? I'm your sister." That made her pause. She sighed, putting her phone down. Then she looked at me with this blank expression, like she wasn't even talking to someone who mattered. "You're not really family to me, Mealy." It felt like she had slapped me. My chest tightened, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She just shrugged. "I don't feel like we're real siblings. I don't want to pretend we are." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. We grew up together. We shared the same house, the same parents, the same childhood memories. How could she say I wasn't family? I felt my eyes sting, but I refused to cry in front of her. I turned and walked away. My parents had to do something about this. They wouldn't let her say something so cruel and get away with it. I found them in the kitchen, calmly having coffee like nothing was wrong. "Did you hear what she said to me?" I asked, my voice shaking. My mom sighed, like I was exhausting her. "Mealy, don't take it so seriously." I stared at her, hoping she was joking. She literally said I'm not her family. Dad rubbed his forehead. "She's just being a teenager. Don't overthink it." Overthink it? My own sister just erased me from her life, and they were acting like I was making a big deal out of nothing. I felt so alone in that moment, standing in the same house where I had always felt safe, but suddenly it didn't feel like home anymore. I couldn't stop thinking about what my sister said. "You're not really family to me." Her words kept replaying in my head like a broken record. Had I done something wrong? Had I ever made her feel like we weren't real sisters? I thought back to our childhood, playing together in the backyard, sharing bedtime stories, fighting over silly things like the TV remote. We weren't perfect, but we were always sisters. At least that's what I thought. The more I thought about it, the more I started questioning everything. Were there signs I had missed? Moments where I was treated differently? My parents' reaction had been just as painful as my sister's words. They didn't defend me. They acted like it wasn't a big deal. But why? That night, unable to sleep, I decided to go through some old family photos. Maybe I just needed a reminder that I belonged, that I was truly part of this family. I pulled out an old album from the living room cabinet and flipped through the pages. There were pictures of birthdays, vacations, and random happy moments. But as I turned the pages, something started to feel off. There were pictures of my sister as a baby, surrounded by my parents, smiling and happy. Then more pictures of her growing up, her first birthday, her first day of school, family trips. But where was I? I flipped back and forth, my heart pounding. There were barely any photos of me as a baby. No pictures of my mom pregnant with me. No hospital pictures. It was like I had just appeared one day, out of nowhere. My hands shook as I turned another page. That's when I noticed something strange, a photo that had been removed. The edges of an old, torn picture were still stuck to the page, but whatever had been there was gone. Why would someone remove a picture from a family album? What was in that missing photo? A cold feeling crept up my spine. Something wasn't right. And for the first time, I had a terrifying thought. What if I wasn't supposed to find out the truth? I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. The missing photo from the album haunted me. It felt like a clue. Something important had been erased. But why? What was my family hiding? That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing with questions, each one scarier than the last. Finally, I got out of bed and made my way to my parents' room. Not inside, of course, I wasn't that brave. Instead, I went to the small storage cabinet in the hallway, the one where they kept old documents, papers, and things they never used. I started searching through it, my hands trembling. At first, it was just boring stuff, old bills, greeting cards, some school certificates. But then, behind a pile of papers, I found a small yellowed envelope. It was tucked away so well that if I hadn't been searching carefully, I would have missed it. My name wasn't on it, but something about it felt important. I hesitated for a second before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded neatly. The moment I unfolded it, my heart stopped. It wasn't just any letter. It was a legal document. And it had my name on it. My eyes darted over the words, trying to make sense of them. My hands gripped the paper tighter as I read, "This is to certify the legal guardianship of Millie Gelson, born on..." Legal guardianship? My breath hitched. I read further. The words blurred as my eyes filled with tears. I wasn't my parents' biological daughter. I had been adopted. A strange numbness washed over me. My fingers felt cold, my chest tight. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. My whole life, I had lived in this house with these people believing I belonged, and now, in a single moment, everything felt like a lie. My mind went blank. I reread the letter, hoping I had misunderstood, but the truth was right there, written in black ink. I wasn't really their daughter. I wasn't really my sister's sister. Was this why she didn't consider me family? Had she always known? Had my parents? Was that why they didn't defend me? Because deep down they agreed. Tears blurred my vision. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I had spent my whole life trying to fit in, trying to be a good daughter, a good sister. But in the end, none of it mattered. Because to them, I wasn't real family. I wasn't really one of them, and now I didn't know who I was at all. I sat on the floor, gripping the letter so tightly that my fingers hurt. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath uneven. Adopted. The word echoed in my head over and over. My whole life I had believed I was just like everyone else in this family, but I wasn't. I never had been. For a moment I tried to convince myself that this didn't change anything. My parents had raised me, loved me, right? But if that was true, why had they never told me? Why had they hidden it? And then, another horrible thought hit me. What if I wasn't adopted out of love? What if I was never meant to be here at all? I read the letter again, scanning every word carefully. That's when I noticed something. The document didn't mention the names of my birth parents. There was nothing about an official adoption agency. Instead, there was a legal agreement, A quiet arrangement between two parties. A deep chill ran through me. What if I wasn't adopted in the normal way? What if I was someone's mistake? A secret my parents had agreed to keep? Suddenly, everything made sense. The way my sister always treated me like an outsider. The way my parents avoided my feelings like my pain wasn't important. Maybe to them, I was just an obligation, someone they had taken in because they had to, not because they wanted to. I thought about my childhood, searching for signs I had ignored, the way my sister always got special treatment, the way my parents seemed more protective of her, more invested in her achievements. I had always brushed it off, thinking maybe I was just imagining things. But now it felt obvious. I had never really belonged. I clenched my jaw, wiping my eyes angrily. I had spent years trying to be the perfect sister, the perfect daughter, just to be cast aside like I was nothing. And the worst part, they had let me believe I was part of them, all while knowing the truth. I wasn't their daughter. I was a burden, a reminder of a secret they wished didn't exist. A lump formed in my throat as I thought about my sister's words. "You're not really family to me." She had always known. That's why she didn't want me at her party. Not because of some silly sibling fight, but because in her eyes I was never her sister to begin with. And the painful truth? Maybe she was right. I couldn't keep this inside anymore. My hands shook as I gripped the letter, my chest tight with anger, confusion, and pain. I stormed into the living room where my parents sat watching TV like everything was normal. But nothing was normal. Nothing had ever been normal. "Tell me the truth." My voice came out sharper than I expected. My parents turned to look at me, confused. I held up the letter. "Did you adopt me? Or was I just some secret you had to hide?" Their faces changed instantly. My mum's eyes widened and my dad let out a deep sigh, rubbing his forehead. They didn't even ask where I found it. They already knew. I felt my stomach drop. That reaction told me everything. "So it's true," I whispered. My voice broke, but I didn't care. "You lied to me my whole life." My mum stood up, reaching for me, but I took a step back. I didn't want comfort, I wanted answers. "Mealy, we were going to tell you one day," she said softly, like that made it better. "When?" I shot back. "After I turned 30? Or never?" My dad finally spoke. "We didn't want you to feel different. We wanted you to feel like you belonged." I let out a bitter laugh. "Then why did you let her treat me like I didn't?" My voice was rising now. I didn't care. "Why did you let my own sister push me out? Why did you act like my feelings didn't matter?" They both looked away. They had no answer for that. My mum's voice trembled. "Mealy, we love you. We raised you. You are our daughter." "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "You raised me, but I was never your daughter. Not really. Not in the way she is." I looked between them, my heart breaking with every word. "That's why you didn't defend me. That's why you acted like it was nothing when she uninvited me. Because deep down, you agreed with her." Tears welled up in my mum's eyes, but I didn't feel sorry for her. I had spent years being the one left out, the one who had to accept things without asking questions. But now I knew the truth. I was never really one of them. And the worst part? They had let me believe I was. I spent the next few days in a daze. The truth had shattered everything I thought I knew. My parents had lied to me my entire life. My sister had never seen me as family, and now I had to decide, did I stay in this house pretending things could go back to normal, or did I walk away and find out who I really was? I wanted to leave. Every part of me screamed to run as far as I could, but where would I go? What would I do? I felt lost, like I didn't belong anywhere. Then, something unexpected happened. My grandmother, my dad's mom, called me. She had heard about the fight. "Come over," she said. Her voice was warm, gentle, the way a real family member should sound. When I arrived, she hugged me tightly, like she knew how broken I felt. We sat in her cozy living room, And for the first time, I let myself cry in front of someone. I told her everything: the letter, my sister's words, the way my parents had dismissed me. She listened without interrupting. When I finally stopped, she reached for my hand. "Millie, family isn't just blood, it's love. And if they made you feel like you don't belong, that's on them, not you." I wiped my tears. "But if I leave, what if I end up alone?" She squeezed my hand. "You won't. You have me, and you have yourself. That's enough to start with." Her words settled deep in my heart. For the first time, I realized I wasn't trapped. I had a choice. I didn't have to stay where I wasn't wanted. I could build a life where I was loved, not because someone had to, but because they truly cared. That night, I went home and packed my bags. My parents tried to stop me, but their words felt empty. My sister didn't say anything, maybe she thought she had won. But I wasn't leaving because of her. I was leaving for me. As I walked out the door, I took one last look at the house where I had spent my entire life. It was just that, a house, not a home. I wasn't running away. I was finally choosing myself. I walked out of that house with nothing but a bag and a heart full of scars. But for the first time, I didn't feel like I was losing something. I felt like I was free. I had spent years trying to be the perfect daughter, the perfect sister. I had begged for love in a place where I was never truly wanted. But now I didn't need their approval. I didn't need to fight for a seat at a table that was never meant for me. As I left, I heard my parents arguing inside. My sister's birthday party, the event I was so brutally uninvited from, had turned into a disaster. Word had spread about my leaving, and instead of celebrating, the family was left dealing with the mess they had created. It was almost funny. The sister who once looked down on me, who erased me from her life, now had to explain why I was gone. And suddenly, I wasn't the forgotten one. They were the ones left behind. But I didn't care about their drama anymore. I was done with their games, their lies, their empty apologies. I stayed with my grandmother for a while. She didn't ask me to justify my pain or tell me I was overreacting. She just let me be. And in that silence, I started to heal. For the first time, I asked myself, who am I outside of them? I wasn't just Millie, the unwanted sister. I wasn't Millie, the family secret. I was me. And that was enough. I didn't need to belong to a family that had never truly accepted me. I could create my own path, build my own life, surround myself with people who chose to love me, not out of obligation, but because they wanted to. That was the real twist. They thought I needed them. But in the end, I was the one who found freedom.